So how do you transform African agriculture and point the way to massive food production, create lots of job opportunities, generate wealth and improve the quality of life for millions across the continent? It's a question that's brought together representatives from development finance institutions, governments, private developers of special economic zones and other key players in Africa's agribusiness sector. After much brainstorming, they settled on the vision articulated by the African Development Bank, which is to create special agro-industrial processing zones and use them to trigger a fundamental change in Africa's economic landscape. Led by Nigeria, Africa's biggest economy, the initiative could make this country and the rest of Africa net food exporters by 2025, raising the continent's food production by an estimated 174 million metric tons, but only if the ADB's initiative is properly implemented by countries like Nigeria.
Africa, a continent of unmatched beauty and wealth, a consumer market of over 1.2 billion people, 65% of the world's arable land, and an agribusiness sector expected to reach $1 trillion by 2030. However, Africa's food import bill, projected to touch $110 billion by 2025, must be reversed. In Nigeria, Africa's largest economy, agricultural development trails the country's population growth, rapid urbanization, and shifting consumer taste. As a result, Nigeria depends on imports for wheat, sugar, fish, dairy, all of which can be produced locally. With oil exports contributing to nearly 80% of Nigeria's total export revenue, agriculture contributes less than 2%. If Africa is to revitalize and reinvigorate its agricultural sector, Nigeria can point the way. Nigeria can raise its food production, eliminate dependence on food imports, grow entrepreneurship, and create massive job opportunities. It's Nigeria's time.
We are strongly supporting Nigeria. Just last week, the African Development Bank and its partners came together for the design of the first phase of what we call special agro-industrial processing zones in Nigeria. These will help to transform agriculture in Nigeria, revive rural economies, boost food and agribusiness investments, and turn many rural areas from zones of economic misery to zones of economic prosperity. We have mobilized $520 million together with our partners in support of Nigeria. These will further help Nigeria to diversify its economy and, of course, boost jobs.
The special agro-industrial processing zones will support inclusive and sustainable agro-industrial development and promote select value chains to unlock the competitiveness of the agriculture sector in Nigeria. The program is designed to enhance complementarity with existing or completed projects financed by the bank, including those in the power, transport, water, and agriculture sectors. All 36 states in Nigeria and the Federal Capital Territory are eligible to participate in the SAPZ program. The Federal Capital Territory, Kaduna, Kano, Kwara, Imo, Cross River, Ogun, and Oyo are earmarked to participate in Phase 1, funded by African Development Bank, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, and the Islamic Development Bank.
Well, it all looks jolly great on video, doesn't it? But how is it all going to work in practice? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by Professor Oyebanji Oyelaran-Oyeyinka, Senior Special Advisor on Industrialization to the President of the African Development Bank. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you, Charles, for inviting me.
Tell us more about these special agro-industrial processing zones and how they're going to work.
This is a model built on what many people know as the special economic zones, but it has its own unique characteristics. As it is going to be not located in, beside a port or an airport, Most of the special economic or export zones are located within those space. Basically, you import the inputs and then you export out of the country. By deliberate design, we locate special agro-industrial processing zones within agrarian communities. We actually choose to locate them in what we call peri-urban areas.
So that means it's going to be rural to some extent.
Yes, going to be rural. And that why? Because 70% of all our smallholder farmers are within those communities. If you don't solve that problem of poverty in that zone, which present additional call zones of misery, you cannot transfer them to zones of prosperity.
But those people are used to practicing agriculture on a very subsistence level.
Yes.
How are you going to educate, train? You've got to do all of that.
Yes, this is really the transformation. You know, you have to structurally transform African economies, and you start doing that with agriculture. This is what all societies have done. Africa remains the only country that never experienced a green revolution. Continent that never experienced a green revolution. And usually, every industrial revolution is preceded by a green revolution. So we never Asia experienced it. In the middle of 1960s, India refused aid from the United States receiving wheat. They actually opted to receive seedlings of wheat. And that started their green revolution. And within 3-4 years, India became self-sufficient.
So what you're proposing is revolutionary.
It's a revolution.
I mean, it sounds incredibly transformative.
Yes, it is. This is the idea.
But it's an idea, as you said.
It's the theory. There's a theory behind it. We've tested the theory in practice. It works. The idea of a cluster, this is based on the idea of clustering. It goes back to Marshall in the 1920s. The idea of actually carving out a specific geographic space. You look at that space and you put all of the infrastructure required into that space, water, power, irrigation, and all of that, to ensure that transaction cost is low, you raise productivity, you attenuate basically all the deficits of infrastructure that is in that zone, and you make it competitive. So this is, but the uniqueness of like I said, of the special processing zone is that we are deliberately identifying the agrarian communities in Africa so that you can use policy to induce a transformation by training, raising their productivity, raising their knowledge base, raising their skills, which is really the problem. Many of them still use hoe and cutlass. They use seeds that are, very low quality. Example, in Sudan, and this example was cited by the president during the retreat. In Sudan, in a place where they only grew wheat for cotton for decades, the African Development Bank supported a program called TAT, Technology for African Agricultural Transformation, that actually raised a heat-tolerant wheat that led to the Sudanese planting almost 800,000 hectares. They moved from about 20%, 25% self-sufficiency of food into almost 54%. In fact, in 3 years, Sudan will be exporting wheat. Same with Ethiopia. Last year, Ethiopia actually harvested 1 million tons of wheat. By the way, that program started in Nigeria.
Now, you were talking about these people exporting wheat, which is still sort of the raw material. What's the focus of these agro-industrial processing zones? Is it the entire value chain or some part of it?
It is the entire value chain. In fact, we call it end-to-end solution. Starting from the farmers, raise their skills, raise their productivity. Within those communities, we are going to be building what we call agri-transformation centers so that they can do a lot of pre-processing, drying, grinding, and all of those things that lead to heavy post-harvest losses, so that we eliminate that and then turn those areas into productive zones by themselves. In fact, ATCs alone will basically change that society. Because when you look at Africa, we always boast that we have 65% of all arable land in the world and all that. You look at a country like Netherlands, doesn't have land. In 2019, the Netherlands exported 95 billion euros of food Why? Because they use technologies, they use science. So this is the kind of thing that we want to do within those societies. Now, adjoining to those communities are the hubs where you add value, process. You change, for example, cassava to industrial starch. And immediately, for example, today you find that how much is cassava, raw cassava per ton, maybe 40,000, 50,000 naira. When you change to starch, 450,000, 500,000. So you immediately add value to that. Today, you want to sell maize, the same thing. You transform it to whatever you want to do, you know. So value addition is central to what we want to do. You know, yeah.
But of course, just listening to you there, as I said, it all sounds brilliant in theory. But there's a fundamental aspect of it that I would imagine concerns you a lot in a country like Nigeria, which is the absence of electricity.
Yeah. So part of the funding of the bank, as you heard the president said, we have raised 520 million. By the way, by today, it's moved to $540 million.
And is that amount of money just for Nigeria?
Just for Nigeria.
Right.
Just for, in fact, there are 8 locations, as we mentioned in the video, just for Nigeria. We are working now in 18 countries. Nigeria is the biggest project that we are doing. This is why we are spending so much time in Nigeria. So what concerns us? Electricity, on the processing side, skills, very important.
Absolutely.
People don't look at those. And the farming side, the productivity of these farmers, ensuring that we actually transform their mindset, you know, raise skills. So all of those things are what the bank's money and its partners is going to do.
Right.
Build power plants, build irrigation system, ensure. Of course, we are also going to leverage those that are already in place. We are working with all the ministries.
Right.
And all the ministers are pledged to support industry, ministry, agri, water resources.
Stay with us. We're going to come back and continue this chat. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat about the African Development Bank's proposed special agro-industrial processing zones in Nigeria and beyond. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Aniagolu, and my first guest today is Professor Oyebanji Oyelaran-Oyeyinka, Senior Special Advisor on Industrialization to the President of the African Development Bank. The bank has been articulating its vision of an agro-industrialized Africa full of processing zones that can trigger a deep change in this continent's economic transformation so that agricultural production catches up with population growth. The initiative imagines a world in which Nigeria, for instance, which imports a lot of food that can be produced locally and where agriculture contributes less than 2% of the country's total export revenue, can revitalize its agriculture sector, raise its food production level, and eliminate dependence on imports. So could this be the agricultural development solution that will transform the landscape in Nigeria and across Africa? And Professor Oyebanji Oyelaran-Oyeyinka, Senior Special Advisor on Industrialization to the President of the African Development Bank, is still with me in the studio. Thank you ever so much for staying with us. And of course, for this to be sustained, there have to be policies and incentives in place to attract investment into those zones. Is that up to the ADB to do that, or the Nigerian government, or both?
Both. So we are working with the government to ensure that, first of all, the incentive is to ensure transparency, accountability. And for this reason, we are working with NSIA, the National Sub-Investment Authority, who highly respected.
That's a very good idea, actually.
Yes, highly respected institution. They are going to be the implementing agency to recruit, to procure all the contractors, the transaction advisors. And of course, because NSI is also owned by the states, so they are trusted. They are, you know, under the Ministry of Finance, but they don't, you know, they don't have the encumbrance of being in the bureaucracy. So they have the fiduciary autonomy to operate quickly and to operate above board. So that is one of the things we recognize very early, that we want to institutionalize this project in a way that's not subject to episodic policy changes that we have in our country.
Yeah, because I mean, you're going to have government, change of government, and a change of administration in the African Development Bank at some point.
Yes, yes. So one of our strategy also is to ensure that we achieve closure of this project as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, to give us a sort of progress update. I mean, where do things stand at the moment? How far down the road are you, and how far do you still have to go?
So we've been working on this since April of 2019. As you know, COVID took away almost a whole year from us. And during that time also we had a lot of virtual meetings with the states. We've done all the feasibility studies, we've done all the environmental studies, all the things that the bank requires to approve a project like this. We'll clear that on the way. So hopefully first week of November, we're going to go to the board and get it finally approved. Once we do that, we are planning a launching of the project in January with all the presidents involved. FDB president, ISDB president, our president here, President Buhari, our AFDB president. So it's going to be a big, but it's not just a launch for the sake of launching, it's to advertise this project.
To attract investors.
Right. That is really the key.
Absolutely.
You want to build a system where investors feel comfortable because they know you've done everything properly. You build, world-class infrastructure. You want to have, and one of the proposals we have is also to do what we call the idea of design, build, and operate system. So for this first 8 zones, we are going to look for global players who will manage the zone, build the zones and manage the zones. Example, in Ethiopia, they have about 24 agro zones, industrial parks now. Half of them are about agro zones. Half of them are actually private. So for us, the first 8 zones will be exemplars, so that when private people see this, they can build their own zones.
Yes.
We really want to encourage that.
So it starts a domino effect.
A domino effect.
Right.
In fact, we've been talking to many of them, Olam, Aliko, Flour Mill, all of them are very much with us on this.
But they want to watch and see what happens.
Yeah, now they see that we're actually doing this. So we want anchor investors within those zones.
Right.
Who will also be,
And as you mentioned, some of these SAPZs have been tested in other countries and have been shown to work effectively and efficiently. You talked about Vietnam, for example.
Vietnam. Let me give you an example. Well, I'll give you 2 or 3 countries. In Vietnam, and Vietnam has very similar profile of history with Nigeria. They fought a war of 20 years, ended the war in 1975, we ended ours in 1972. This is a country
1970.
1970. Nigeria. 70?
1970.
Okay, 70. Now, Vietnam, today, as we speak, has 376 zones, industrial parks. 3/4 of them are agro. The investment into those zones in the last 10 years over $46 billion. 60% of that country's GDP comes from agro, these zones.
And that's what you want in Nigeria.
This is what we want.
Yeah.
This is what we want in Korea. Korea is a little bit more advanced than us, but they have over 1,000 industrial parks. 460 of them are agro parks. In 2018 alone, exports of food from South Korea was about $12 billion. And they don't even play globally in terms of food, they just export to Asia.
And for Nigeria, this is particularly urgent, isn't it, given the phasing out of fossil fuels now?
Yes, very urgent. The energy transition issue is very critical for Nigeria. Hydrocarbon is going to run into a lot of problems. Unfortunately for us, I call it something, I call it climate colonialism. Even gas is being included in this mix, which we have to fight.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because now you see a situation where Africa is paying the price of 200 years of industrialization for the developed countries. But again, coming back to your question, Nigeria needs to, whatever it does, we have to transit. Look at the profile of export. We talk of revenue concentration, as Dr. Adishna was saying at that meeting. It also speaks to the lack of diversification. I know government officials always with diversification, but they don't do it. We are not doing it.
Yeah.
Look at this country that I just mentioned to you, Vietnam. You look at their export mix. The first level of their exports change between the last 20 years, they used to be like us. Hydrocarbon,
but
by the way,
it's changed dramatically.
It's changed dramatically.
Okay. Let me just get this in because we've got about a minute to go. There is a wider, larger picture, isn't there? This is an industrialization strategy to not only transform poor rural areas into zones of prosperity, but hopefully reduce migration to the urban areas and, rather importantly, reduce or possibly end things like herder-farmer clashes.
Precisely. Actually, as a matter of fact, the 3 out of the 8 zones want to do livestock. They are calling it special livestock zones. That is FCT, Kwara, and even Imo, which has some advantage in poultry. And we are really encouraging them, even Ogun to some extent. In fact, yesterday we were at the French embassy where we actually talking to investors. We are the British group. We've been talking to all manner of people. This is the way to transform the rural and reduce the insecurity.
Okay. Please come back and talk to us again as this makes progress. It sounds fascinating. And thank you very much indeed for coming in. Professor Oyebanji Oyelaran-Oyeyinka is Senior Special Advisor on Industrialization to the President of the African Development Bank.